Today I'm going to speak to how do we get over a bruised ego with grace and peacefully and without any self-destruction or behaviors that come from impulsive reactions and could cause some kind of harm to us, whether it be to our reputation or to a relationship. When we overreact and we're not in control, we tend to make bad decisions. So it's not so much that we're being completely altruistic and compassionate to the other person, that we are not going to come at them with a angry reaction that would make them feel bad or hurt their feelings, even though, on a completely benevolent level, we could choose that as our reasoning. But in a more broad or general sense, when we're operating in society, because sometimes these are situations that happen at work, or they're not in a situation with a loved one who we're close to, who would be very forgiving if we had some kind of explosion and said things that we regret or didn't mean. It can be a lot more consequential in a situation that has ramifications, like at your job, where you could be disciplined or possibly terminated from a position based on a really bad reaction to what somebody brings to you, something that is really offensive maybe, or catches you off guard, or even being fired. That can be a huge hit to your ego. And how do you respond to that? So how can we get through something that is instinctually just very human, to react negatively when somebody throws out an insult, or there's a huge disappointment, and especially something that's very shocking? We are going to have a reaction of negativity. It is usually going to be one of anger or hurt feelings that results in us being really sad, and usually loss and grief does lead to feelings of anger toward the person that offended you or had to fire you, or maybe even unfairly discriminated against you. And there's so many different things that can happen in a human life, and they're going to happen. There are situations like this that are going to happen to us all as we move from young adulthood through our entire adulthood. So we're always going to have, probably every year and several times a year, a situation where somebody is going to hurt our feelings. And it can be anything as small as a grandchild making a snitty remark, or an insult that we take really personally that wasn't meant to offend, but it can feel so painful, or a parent that says something to us really critical. It could be a superior in a work situation. It could be a friend, somebody that you thought was a friend who betrays you. It could be your partner who says something that's very insulting, and you can't understand why they would see you in such a negative light. There are just numerous and endless examples of ways that we get our feelings hurt, our ego bruised. So when somebody comes at you and puts something or brings something in front of you that makes you react in a way where your feelings are hurt or you feel insulted, the first instinctual reaction is to stand up for yourself, to get defensive. And if you are quick with your temper, the defensiveness will likely maybe be an insult back at that person. It might be an equivalent reaction to what you feel has just happened to you. So you might lash out. You may be one that feels like they're backed in a corner and you really lash out. You may shout, you may write an email in all capital letters as if you're shouting at the recipient, and you might hit the send button. You might text something that is vicious and hit the send button. So there's all kinds of ways that we can let something that comes to us not only boomerang back out to the other person, but snowball, because our reaction might actually be a lot bigger than the intention or what they think they conveyed in terms of their message and what we received. Those can be different magnitudes. They may see something as a smaller deal than you do, or they may not at all be thinking about your feelings. And that's really a huge part of why we should not take things personally. The person who is conveying the message that's going to be the betrayal or the disappointment is really only thinking about their feelings and on some level preparing themselves for your reaction. They're not necessarily thinking about your feelings. They may consciously know in their mind and in their thought process that you are going to probably be angry or have a negative reaction, but they are conveying some kind of a message, and their agenda is very different from yours in that circumstance because they already know what's going to be coming and you don't. So there isn't any way to avoid these unforeseen circumstances. They're going to happen. Things are going to come out of nowhere in each one of our lives, and there's no getting around it. So we may as well discuss it, talk about it, and come up with a plan or an idea, a mantra, a meditation, a prayer, or some form of guidance that we can create ourselves or even integrate from some of the studies that we've done, some of the teachings that we've been receiving. Maybe we can integrate that into whatever our personal plan is going to be. But the smart thing to do is to think about this ahead of time. And now, as you want to progress and be successful in life, you have to know how to communicate, have interactions, and be able to see opportunities when they're there. And if you're bogged down by a lot of ego stuff, hurt feelings, depression, kind of stagnant in these stories that have happened, just not being able to move on from the past, replaying conversations again and again, sort of feeling stuck because you don't know where to go next. It's essential to have a plan for how to quickly move through these situations without getting bogged down so that you can just keep moving, because every moment of our lives is very valuable. We want to be spending our lives having experiences that we enjoy, and we don't want to be bogged down by an opinion of us or an action that really was not personal but selfish on another person's part. So we have to understand that whoever is delivering the bad news is either that's their role that they have to play, or maybe they were somebody that betrayed you and it was very selfish, and maybe their only intention is to be selfish and get what they want. And it is very possible and probable in these situations that the person delivering that message is not going to be able to take your feelings into consideration first, and they know that you're most likely going to be upset about the news that they've just delivered. So again, the best thing to do is not take it personally. Now, how do we control the reaction? Because we can tell ourselves this again and again, well, I'm not going to take that personally because they did this because they've got issues. Or if it's something with a job, okay, they needed to communicate this to me because of the position that they're in, and that doesn't have to be taken personally. And if it is something in the way of discrimination, reacting to it in a very angry way is not going to benefit you or anybody else. So, with all of those things in mind, how do we, in the moment when we get shocked, how do we prevent ourselves from just having an impulsive, angry, negative reaction? And then, if we can control that first part, how do we sustain that long term so we don't wait 48 hours or 72 hours before we go on social media and start making all kinds of angry, passive aggressive posts? So it's about self control from the moment that it happens throughout the entire moment of it, that we do not put anything into the situation from our end that would have a negative ripple effect. So we have to be completely in control and self-disciplined to be able to accomplish this. And it is really hard. You can think of circumstances, and probably in anybody's life, something even within the past couple of months where somebody has said something to you that stung. It's a jab, it's an insult, it's somebody that keeps finding something wrong. You're doing the best that you can with yourself and however you're involved, and this person just keeps finding something. And your ego is taking a hit each time. And you're, hopefully remaining strong and you keep going. But we can all think of times where it's like, okay, it was the straw that broke the camel's back. I exploded. I sent this email or this text to this person, and maybe even there are relationships that have ended and not even been mended because of angry, impulsive reactions to the things that really bruise our ego. Sometimes those boundaries are super necessary if it's abusive, but if it is something where there is a misunderstanding, and even if it is something where somebody's judging you and there's a bit of a misunderstanding, and maybe that's a friend, you'd have to weigh it out between how valuable that relationship is to you. If the person is worth having in your life, then you want to get through all of these interactions with grace. If it's a boss or a job that you really want to keep, you have to get through the bad news with grace. You can't have instinctual, explosive, defensive reactions when bad news comes your way. And so the way to master this is to be able to do it in all circumstances, whether it be with your boss when you need the job, or whether it be with a friend where you don't really need this friend for anything. You liked hanging out, but take it or leave it. If you can get through a situation with somebody that you can take or leave with grace, then you're way more likely to be able to do that with a boss when you know you need to keep the job. Because if you keep doing it, it becomes a habit. So getting through those situations habitually with grace means that each time one comes up, you follow your game plan. Now, your game plan can be what you want it to be, but some suggestions are knowing that when this happens to you, you identify it right away and you immediately make a promise to yourself. And anytime your ego gets bruised or your feelings get hurt, this promise pops into your head first. So maybe it's a mantra that you say over and over again for a while as you're going through something. The mantra has to do with, let's not do anything right now. Let's breathe and find a way to relax. Let's promise ourselves that we're going to take 24 hours at least before giving any kind of response. And the only response that we should be giving is, you caught me off guard. Please allow me a day or so to process this, and I will get back to you with a response. And leave it at that until you have had time to step back. So the strong suggestion would be the first thing we do when we identify that this is happening is to really just be, as genuine as possible with saying, okay, I need time to process this. I don't want to say something that I'm going to regret. I'm stunned. I do want to respond, but I need some time here. Give me, at least a day. If it's a work situation, it is reasonable and okay if you are in a room and this is happening and you need 24 hours, you just get up and you say, I will respond, but I want to process this. I need time to be able to prepare a professional response. So I'm going to contact you tomorrow at some point, and we'll set up a time for me to respond. So you promise yourself, first and foremost, you're giving yourself time before you give any response at all to the actual bad news and or to the insults, or even if it's on social media, then of course you don't have to say to the person, I'll comment to you back to you tomorrow. But your promise to yourself is, I'm going to take at least 24 hours to give myself time to relax and release, step away from the attachment that I have to this. And then your second step, a strong suggestion would be to then see the angle as that, it's not personal. Social media, honestly, you may decide that no response to these things is the peaceful way, and you might delete a comment and block the person. I don't know. Maybe that's your style. Maybe it's not your style. But this is where the personalized plan comes into play. It's like the next step is really detaching from it, knowing it's not personal. And then step 3 is going to be, okay, well, is there going to be a reaction or not a reaction? If there is a reaction, if you do decide to do a reaction and go on to step 4, which would be planning out a very diplomatic and well thought out, emotionally balanced, respectful and not abusive, but a strong boundary setting response. So, and if there's no reaction in step 3, if that's what you choose, then you also have to kind of think like, if it's a social media thing, do I want to like defriend this person or block them? Is it that bad? It's on the telephone, am I going to break off a friendship? Am I going to block this person if they're just an acquaintance? And then in the situations like, well, it's a work situation, I can't really block this person. Just no response is fine. That's fine too. Don't block them. Just don't respond if you don't have to. If it's something more on a personal level that doesn't need a response or warrant a response, just don't. And so that can be somewhat of your plan for, the how to not respond and what to do with them after not responding to the news. And then on the, step 4, if you feel like, well, it is necessary for me to respond, and really just making sure and checking in that it is necessary. But if you feel that it is, then really promising yourself to formulate a response that is mature, professional, intelligent, emotionally intelligent, not abusive, straightforward, could be very assertive, but very honest and open. So you can make up your own rules here, but those are some suggestions for ways that it can go and ways that you can plan this out to integrate grace into your own personal style. Because there's no way that we want to fake it till we make it when we're in a situation where somebody has really offended us or bruised our ego. Now, we can do that, but that's only going to last so long. You're still going to be having a reaction within yourself. And that detachment that you can form by going through some kind of a process of controlling and managing the bruised ego, and really the whole, like, just knowing it's not about you, not taking it personally. What somebody thinks of you is none of your business. You know you, and if you're good with you and you're okay with you, you have to be willing to just brush off insults in life, because especially if you're successful, people are going to feel that they're competing with you, and a lot of people will intentionally try to dim your light. They'll try to throw you off. And so these things happen, unfortunately, in our human lives, and we're better off if we do have a skill set to be prepared for these types of things. So hopefully this helps a little bit on how to gracefully get through that bruised ego. It's having a plan, but first just really taking pause, and mainly, the best outcome does not come by flailing our arms and yelling or slinging insults. That will just produce more of the same behavior. It's like just adding fuel to the fire or more flames to the fire. Yes, that doesn't really have a positive benefit for you in the end. So what you want to do is leave the fire with the other person and step away and be in your nice cool area where it's breezy and you're in the shade and you're sitting back and watching this person burn up in their own anger or whatever it is that that their issues happen to be, that they may be projecting off onto you. So, and even in the case where maybe you did lose a job and it was your fault and your ego is bruised there, that might be a little bit easier not to lash out at the person that had to fire you. But it is about, like, then how do you handle the bruised ego with everything in your life? You can't take anger into your interactions and take it out on others in your life and expect that to produce positive results. So it's still a matter of taking a step back from it, breathing, not overreacting, giving yourself space and time to process, and then deciding like what is going to be the next step. Is there, and if you've lost a job, there's no, am I going to react or not react? You are already through that moment. So then the next step just becomes, what's going to be the best decision here? Finding a job within the same career, or committing, to a plan on how to make that dream comes true, whatever the next step is going to be, and putting that into action and going forward. But the commitment is not to get dragged down by the depression or the bruised ego, because there are literally a lot of jobs to be had and gotten, and there are billions of people on this planet. So as far as relationships, friendships, even colleagues, bosses, there's so many opportunities to have something that's more aligned with your own personal vision, your own vibration, and to be happy in all of these different roles. And sometimes that does mean change. So again, then some people really lean on their faith in these situations where they do get the bruised ego and just say, well, this is what was meant to happen, and this will get me to an even better place. And that's a great way to do this as well, integrate it into your personal plan. If you do have faith and if you trust yourself, you can integrate a lot of really positive mantras in with just on that trusting yourself theme. Just really getting in there and knowing that you do have what it takes to make the best decisions. And sometimes things don't work out because they're not meant to, they're not supposed to, because that's not going to be your best path. And there's a lot of times we try to force things to happen that just are not meant to be there, not the highest path. And when we do try to force, it tends to blow out even more, and we are, wondering or kicking ourselves for everything that we think we did wrong to cause that to happen. And it's okay to just let it go. And if you're a believer, maybe you say, like, I'm just giving this up to God. I just have to give it up to God, and I have to be open to new opportunities. This has already happened. It's the way that it went. And I'm not going to let this get me down. I'm going to continue to live and enjoy life and find my next steps. So there are, as far as personalized plans for how to get through these difficult moments with grace, everybody's going to recruit different tools that they have, but general guideline can be the same as far as, taking the time for self-care and reflection before responding, and really formulating the right response if there has to be one, if it's necessary. something diplomatic, understanding, and not insulting or abusive, no matter how much you may want to get revenge, recognizing that any negative behaviors or communications will result in negative outcomes in your own life. So it's just not worth it. It will not hurt the other person. It will hurt you, and then because it hurts you, it's going to hurt the collective because we're all connected. So being self-disciplined about being in control and not reacting right in the moment off of the emotion and off of the surprise and the shock of bad news and of something that really hurts your feelings. And again, the more you practice this, the easier this gets. You just have a technique and you might write it out and you just practice it again and again each time something comes up that bugs you. And it can even be something as annoying as like road rage, but it's still, you go through the same process of like, okay, it's happening again. Somebody made me angry. I'm not going to react. I'm going to wait 24 hours before reacting. Now, by the time 10 minutes later you're driving down the road, you've already forgotten about it. So that's what's great. You don't do some kind of weird negative reaction where you flip somebody off and then they end up U-turning and following you and ramming into your car. You just say, well, I'm going to give this 24 hours and let this process, and people are jerks, and you might go around a little bit in your head and process it out, and then you get to the point of like, well, this isn't personal. I don't even know that person. They're just having a bad day, and that's okay. I've done that before. And then before you know it, you are detached from it. You're moving on with your life, and it doesn't have any negative consequences as a result of misdirected anger or just unnecessary energy spent on negativity that's not even yours. So it's a lot. I could go on for a long time about this topic because there are so many different techniques and styles, and examples that I could touch on with it. But, really just understanding, I think the most important thing here is that we should have a tool. We should have a plan, because these things are going to happen in life, and we are going to benefit ourselves more by just being able to be in control of our emotions and our reactions, being smart and wise about how we handle these kind of ego situations so that we don't end up in trouble or in any kind of negative outcome from our behaviors or our reactions to something that, we took personally. So I hope you got something out of this that can benefit you and help you in the future. Thank you for listening.